Today on Marian McPartland's Piano Jazz, we bring you a program from 1985 with one of the most popular stylists in contemporary jazz, pianist Ahmad Jamal, recipient of the prestigious Jazzmaster Award and numerous others. He has been a major force on the jazz recording scene ever since his 1958 live album made at Chicago's Pershing Lounge. Jamal reprises two classics from that session in duets with Marian, Poinciana and But Not For Me. We now join Marian McPartland with Ahmad Jamal.
You know, you and I go back a few years.
It's just great seeing you again.
It's great seeing you, and I still have this picture, mental picture of you at the London House with your trio, and I think that probably was the main trio with Vernel Fournier.
I was just going to ask you who was working. Well, of course,
Israel
Vernel
Crosby
was there, and Israel, bless his heart.
Well, I can't wait to hear you play. It's been so long, so to hear you live. So please play something for me. What'll it be?
I'd love to do a thing I did in Spain. In fact, I wrote it in Spain, and it's called Spain.
What is it, like your impressions of the countryside?
Sort of. It was called something else, and I decided to change it to Spain.
Well, please play it for me. Ooh, that piece has a real, like a brooding quality about it.
Thank you.
As if it was done on a hot, sunny afternoon where everything was still and there's a little dust, a kind of dusty atmosphere. And I'm thinking of how, do they still, those little donkeys go through the small towns?
I didn't go in that section, but it has, as you say, a brooding quality about it.
That's a beautiful piece.
Thank you.
And I can see you've not been letting time go wasting in writing some new pieces.
I've been doing a bit of writing lately, Marian. I don't have as much time as I would like to spend writing, but once in a while I can manage to get to the old manuscript.
Well, and to see something written out so beautifully. I mean, I haven't seen the copy of that one, but the one you gave me, Without You, I should certainly have no excuse for not playing that because it's so beautifully written
I
out.
certainly hope you will.
I'm going to, but I'm going to ask you a couple of things. When I first met you in Chicago, at the London House, were you living in Chicago then? Had you come there from Pittsburgh, or was that one of your first engagements?
I had went to Chicago. I think I left Pittsburgh. Went to Chicago in 1948. I had been traveling before that with the George Hudson Orchestra, Marian. And I went back home between 47 and 48, and I went to Chicago. And I stayed there until 1960.
Boy, the London House was sort of your home base, that and the Pershing.
London House, I used to work there as an intermission group. And I left the London House, went to New York, played the Embers for a while, then went back and became an artist in residence at the Pershing Lounge.
Yeah, I remember that. In fact, you recorded there.
Yes, I did.
Several. I know that there must be more than one of those at the Pershing albums.
Yeah, we had an old Steinway that was built in 1890, as a matter of fact, that we recorded on there. And
I remember that piano. I was out there a few times.
It came off very well.
Yeah, I hate to sort of get into that nostalgic bag, but thinking about all those times and the music, the way it was played then, and the way you sounded from the first time I heard you, it was, those were real exciting times for me. I hadn't been over here too long from England, and I was just digging everything.
They were good times. I can still see Billie Holiday with her little dog she used to bring in the Pershing.
The gardenia.
Yeah, I can see it just as well as it was yesterday.
And did she work there, or did she just come out there?
She was staying in the hotel. She was just coming in to see me. She was working out of town, but she was passing through at the time.
First time I met Billie was at the Blue Note. And I think you were in town too, but we played together. I mean, that's opposite Billie, rather. So, that's an experience.
Frank Holstein's place.
Frank Holstein's place. Well, anyway, will you go ahead and play?
Sure. Here's a tune by
you.
Not Johnny Mandel, but by me. That's right. I was going to say by Johnny Mandel, but that's later on. That I had the pleasure of writing maybe a month or two ago. Hopefully Stevie Wonder's going to do lyrics to this. It's called Without You.
That would be nice. Ooh, that's such a beautiful tune. If Stevie Wonder puts the lyric to that, you're going to have a hit on your hands.
I might be able to retire, huh, at long last.
Oh, you don't want to do that. Somebody that plays those gorgeous harmonies, you would never want to retire. That would be silly.
Well, we're going to send a tape to Steve, as a matter of fact, tonight to listen to it, and we hope he'll like it well enough to do lyrics. We were together in New Orleans not too long ago.
Well,
I was doing the Fairmont down there, so we spent a few hours together. He was trying to convince me to probe into the drum synthesizer. He wanted me to get a machine and explore some rhythms.
And what did you decide?
I haven't gotten it yet, Mary.
Well, I'm sort of on the fence about that. I still think a real live drummer is the best there is.
A real live drummer is a real thing.
Yes, you've had some of the best. Thinking of Fernell, is he?
I've been very fortunate. I've had some great drummers, and it's very interesting. Most of the great drummers, or a lot of the great drummers, I can't say most because the drummers come from everywhere, but certainly a lot of them come from New Orleans. I have one now, Hurlin Riley, and Vernell Fournier, who's also from New Orleans. Both of them, and both of them. Vernell Fournier, without a doubt, is one of the world's greatest drummers, no question about it.
Yeah, I would say so. What's the name of the one you have now?
Hurlin Riley.
Riley.
He was working with Al Hurt some time ago now, and then he went out with a Broadway show one more time. He was in London for 6 months with that. Now he's back with me.
And who's on
bass?
But
he's also from New Orleans. I'm using a young man that was talking about one of your songs the other day. I guess it was Ambiance.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
And James Kamak, a remarkable bassist, Marian. He's originally from Washington, D.C. He's been with the West Point Army Band, and he's just a great bassist. And I have guitars also working with me now.
I know everybody would love to hear one of your big hits that you did years ago, but first...
Well, I'm certainly hoping you'll play one of those things for me. I'd love to hear you play Poinciana later on
of course,
in the program.
It would be rather shameless of me to do that, but
I think it'll be great.
I'll just sort of work in easy and do this one that you wanted to hear by Harold Arlen, Ill Wind.
I'd love to hear it. You know the story I told you about that.
Tell me.
Why I wanted to hear it. You know, the last time I heard this perform, I was at the Hickory House, and I had the enviable pleasure of listening to Mary Lou Williams play it that night, Marian. And I would love to hear you do it.
Of course, you just put me on the spot when you said that, because Mary Lou was somebody I really adored and respected and admired. And actually, I guess I knew her pretty well, and she was a big influence on me. And, well, anyway, I won't talk about that. See what I can do with this. Ill Wind by Harold Arlen. And here goes. you make me
Magnificent.
nervous.
It's just great.
Playing for you
Marvelous.
is,
It's great, Marian.
well, it's a tune I've always liked. I don't know, you must play all
Where do
those.
you get all those magnificent harmonies from?
Listening to people like you, thinking, ooh, that would be...
Listening to yourself.
No, I sometimes I guess it's a good idea to listen to oneself, but, I mean, for instance, you, like, after you've made a record, do you go back and listen to it and take it apart and say, oh, I should have done this, or I should have done that?
I listen to it so much in the production stages, as you know,
Yeah.
that the only time I listen afterward is when I'm doing an interview at a station. They happen to have the record there, hopefully. But I very rarely continue listening because I've done so much listening prior to release time. And I've, in fact, case in point would be the historic thing we did at the Pershing with Israel and Vernell. We did 43 tracks that night at the Pershing, and I only used 8. So that involved a lot of editing, a lot of listening. I continued to listen to that quite a bit afterward. That was a rarity, but it was played so much, and I guess that's the reason why. I was at the peak of the interviews at that time. I was doing a lot of interviews.
Well, a lot was happening with you at that. I don't know which one, whether you're referring to, but not for me. I don't know which one came first.
628, yes.
But that was such a huge hit.
It was.
My
So it was on the
goodness.
charts for 108 weeks. And we were getting airtime that was unheard of because, of course, Poinciana was 7 minutes and 35 seconds. But to get back to the point, that's one of the rare times that I listened a lot after it was released. Most of the time, all my listening is done prior to release, and that's it.
I guess it's the same with me, too, because after you've done it, you sort of, at least I sort of think, well, that's it, I've done that.
Yeah, you go on to the next
You go on to
thing.
the next one.
And in fact, I was asked a few days ago, we were doing a seminar in Kansas City at the university there. And a young man asked me what is my favorite product, my favorite LP or recording, whatever. And I said, the next one.
Well, I guess that's, most of us do think that way, but it's still in all, if you had to, I guess I'll put you on the spot, but if you had to pick one that isn't the next one, I mean, wouldn't you be pretty satisfied with some of those things you did?
The most put together one, or the one I think that was close to artistic perfection as much as I can get in my own person, would be 628, the one at the Pershing.
Well, you know,
I made one mistake there, though. I didn't put one of my songs on that album. I did a thing by Dizzy Gillespie. I did George Gershwin's "But Not For Me" and some others, but I did not do any of my own compositions. I was criticized severely for that.
well, I guess you knew better after that. That it taught you in a hurry. Well, talking about but not for me, you know, as you say, you've heard it so much, but I know everybody would love to hear you do it.
Very rarely play it, and I would only do it for you, I tell you.
Well, we can do it as a duet. I can get in there and put in my own 10
I
cents
love it.
if you'd like.
I love that supportive role that you do so well for this.
I don't know if it's supportive or
broken down
destructive. You know, that's still a great version. I mean, it's different from the record, but...
Never played it that way in my life.
Well, you couldn't. It's a whole different thing.
How many lessons I'm learning today. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was for me, too. What else? Oh, I know, coming up, something. I'm dying to hear you play. Now, you were telling me before that you do a lot of tunes by Johnny Mandel, and you picked one that is not really what I'd call a run-of-the-mill, or none of his tunes are run-of-the-mill, but I mean tunes that are played a lot, like Shadow of Your Smile.
I do a lot of things. I'll tell you also, when we first went with Fox, 20th Century Fox Records, that is, we were called to perform some of the soundtrack for the reissue of the movie MASH, rather. And that's also one of Johnny Mandel's claims to fame.
I love that tune. It's fun to play on, actually.
And we did some of that soundtrack, which was Johnny Mandel's music, or is. And we also did Time for Love and some other things that I enjoy doing. So he's one of my favorite writers.
But this one you're going to play, Close Enough for Love, I didn't hear that for quite a while. I think I heard Peggy Lee sing it.
You were going to play a bit of The Shining Sea for me.
My hand just hovered over the piano for a second. I want to hear you do Close Enough for Love. Please. You have such an intense feeling, Ahmad Jamal, in all those ballads, especially numbers like the minor ballad seems to really suit your temperament.
I like doing ballads. They're difficult to play, and I think it requires years of living really to read them properly.
Well, that's probably true because especially when you know the lyrics to some of these things, and they really seem to fit one's real life situation.
Are you going through the lyrics as you play?
Oh, sure.
Mm-hmm. You have to, don't you?
Sure.
There's more coming up with Marian McPartland and her guest Ahmad Jamal in this favorite program from 1985. This is Piano Jazz from NPR Music.
This tune that you suggested that we should play, Polka Dots and Moonbeams, I love that tune.
That wasn't written yesterday either, was
That
it?
wasn't written yesterday. And you know, I heard Andre Previn play it at the London House, and he came in like off the road with a trio consisting of Shelley Mann. I'm trying to think who the bass player was, and he hadn't rehearsed or anything. He sat down, and that was one of the tunes he played, and it was so beautiful.
Lester Young used to do this so well too. I know you've heard.
What
Lester's.
you mean? Come in with a and just start playing without rehearsing? And
No, this was one of Lester's great records, Polka Dots and Moonbeams. One of my favorite records by Lester Young.
I was just reading an article about him the other day in Coda magazine. He's such a fabulous man. I'm so happy I had a chance to meet him. I used to go to Birdland when we were at the Hickory House. I used to tear across the street to Birdland between sets.
Did you get to know Lester very well?
No, I don't know who knew him well, but
right.
I didn't. I was sort of shy of him. But
Did you talk to him at all?
Yes, oh sure. Well, I guess we can play our own version of Polka Dots.
Want to do it?
Think
Fine.
about Lester a little bit.
I'll let you start. You want me to start? You want to start?
I'll
No,
start.
I'll let
How
you
about
start.
that?
That'd be great. I've been starting.
the pretty changes you put in there. Because, I think I was just one step behind, but you just did a beautiful set of changes on the end there.
Thank you.
And I was sort of like...
You weren't one step behind at all.
I was hearing it a minute after it happened and sort of catching up, but I tell you...
You're always one step ahead. Believe me.
Now, I'm dying to hear you play another of your things.
It's Firefly.
I haven't heard this on the record yet.
I don't know if I should do it or not. Maybe I...
Do you want me to coax you?
I should play something easy. I was saying that my things are easier to play, but this is one... Well, let me just give a little bit. No, please play
it. Firefly. Firefly, that's great. These are great pieces. I'd like to have them all, especially the ballad, Without You. Those, you must sit home and practice a lot, or think of ideas or play, don't you?
I just signed something for you. What does it say?
I can't read all of it, but it says, I can't read this. I can't read this. No, but it's a nice
You're going to make me
compliment.
practice.
Thank you.
That's what it says. You're going to make me practice. I don't practice enough. I lost the discipline for practice many, many years ago. And this morning I sat down. I just picked up a book that I had in my library, but I don't know where it is. Some of the well-tempered clavichord things by Bach. And I was doing that this morning. I really don't have the time to practice like I should, but I am getting back to the piano much more often or more frequently than I was in the past.
Well, somebody said to me, or I guess when I started playing professionally, somebody said, do all the practice you can because when you start working steady and going out on the road, you won't have time to practice. And I really haven't practiced the way I used to. I mean, believe it or not, I used to do 8 hours a day when I was a kid.
How much are you doing now? 7?
Nothing. My father used to say...
Sounds like 7.
My father used to say...
At least 7.
Doesn't she do anything else except play the piano all day?
Well, you know, we did the same thing in Pittsburgh, which is my hometown. I used to practice, and leave the door open, hoping that someone would come along and discover me one of these days. But it never happened. I had to leave home. All of that. In fact, I'm still trying to find someone to discover me, Marian.
Oh, I seem to think that the door was left open and people came rushing in. But you were from Mary Lou was in Pittsburgh too, wasn't
Mary Lou and myself and Earl Garner, we all went to the same high school.
Oh, no kidding.
Dodo Mamarosa went to the same elementary school, and Dodo is a pianist that's not mentioned enough. He
Where
was
is
a marvelous,
that guy? We want to find him.
I don't know where Dodo is, but he was on those very early things with Artie Shaw, Summit Ridge Drive. He was playing harpsichord. Dodo was a great. He was on some early things with Charlie Parker as well on Dow.
Yeah, I know he was. He was a fantastic
great pianist.
player.
But Billy Strayhorn used to sell papers to his family as well. He's from my hometown.
What?
Too. Oh yes.
That's what.
He used to sell newspapers to Billy's family.
Oh my goodness.
And of course, Roy Eldridge is from there, and Earl Hines and Ray Brown.
It's a very
Art
distinguished
Blakey,
town.
Billy
musically.
Eckstein.
Oh,
yes.
goodness, all those people.
George Benson, Stanley Turntine.
I don't know what to say, because I'm bowled over by everything that's happening, and now I have to, since I have tried my best to get you to play Poinciana.
No, this is my treat.
And you refuse.
This is my treat.
I'm going to have to. But you know what?
This is certainly worth coming in from Massachusetts for, believe me.
You know what I wish you'd do? You started to play a little bit of Poinciana, and you played a certain kind of an intro. Lead me in, just sort of set me rolling on this thing.
I'll play a few of my old lines for you. Okay?
All right, whatever. You know, it would have been shameful if I would have just played that by myself.
I know I wasn't supposed to play all through that.
Oh, but
That was shameful for me to
No,
do that. I
no.
couldn't resist it, though.
it was so nice, and it really took me back because I haven't heard that for quite a while, and I remember how impressed I was with all the space. You know, you've always been somebody that has utilized space very well. You don't always keep playing throughout everything like a printing press. You know, you just sort of sit back and let the bass line happen, or let.
I really enjoyed
something.
that, though.
I did
I
too.
really did.
I did too. But it's a very memorable tune. It's a tune that one always thinks of you when you think of that.
We
tune.
still do it. In fact, it's very difficult not to do it, and every time it's a new challenge. It's a lot of fun still to play it.
I'll bet it is. But do you find that audiences have changed? Do a lot of very young people come in who might not be as familiar with that part of the repertoire as we are? Is that a new thing for them to hear that tune?
Very rarely. Most of the young people come in and are quite familiar with it. I don't know if it's by way of their parents or what, but interestingly enough, they know it.
Well, I think that's great. As a matter of fact, somebody said to me, and I think it's true, that jazz, this kind of improvised music, whatever you want to call it, brings together generations more than other kinds of music, which seems to separate the generations. I mean, jazz really, like the parents love it, and they introduce it to the kids, and the kids start liking it. I've got people that come around that I used to know in the Hickory House when they were kids, and then they got married, and
I run into that often too. I know
Isn't it-
exactly
isn't
what
that-
you're
isn't
talking
that kind
about. It's
of
very,
fun?
very interesting. Sort of a unifying force, isn't
a
it?
unifying force. See, you said it so much better. I need somebody erudite around here. That's the thing. Hey, let's do another duet. Waste me one more time.
John Burke's. I was just with John Burke's about 7 weeks ago, wouldn't you? And I haven't done this in years either. And you floored me when you were playing bits and pieces of it earlier today.
What,
It's
wouldn't
been
you?
so
Wouldn't
long.
you? Well, it has for me too.
Yeah.
So we can both cop out.
I'd love to do it. You want me to lead in or
Yes,
what?
yes, please. Well, I squeaked by with that one, Ahmad, and I must thank you for coming and spending the afternoon.
It's been a pleasure being with you.
Thank you so much.
You've just heard a 1985 episode of Piano Jazz with Marian McPartland and guest Ahmad Jamal. Join us each week at this time for programs from the Piano Jazz Archives with Marian McPartland and other outstanding guest artists. Piano Jazz is a production of South Carolina Public Radio. The producer of this episode was Dick Phipps, recording engineer Mike Moran, mastering engineer Sherry Hutchinson, production assistant Wendell Eccles, executive producer William D. Hay. I'm David Mitchell. We love to hear from you. Our email address is pj@scetv.org. Our postal address is 1041 George Rogers Boulevard, Columbia, South Carolina 29201. You can learn more about the artists and music heard on Piano Jazz from our website, pianojazz.npr.org. Piano Jazz is made possible by the Friends of Piano Jazz, NPR member stations, and NPR. Funding for this episode was originally provided by Exxon Corporation. Support for digital archiving was provided by Save America's Treasures through a partnership between the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Park Service Department of the Interior. Support for NPR comes from NPR contributors, which include the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, working with others to build a culture of health for all, on the web at rwjf.org, and the Walton Family Foundation, working to prepare all students for a lifetime of opportunity by ensuring access to high-quality K-12 choices. More information is available at waltonk12.org. This is NPR.